Hello, my name is Miguel Naranjo, and I am Program Officer with the UNFCCC Secretariat, also known as UN Climate Change. I apologize for not having been able to join you live today, but we are in the middle of our climate change conference, COP26. I thank One Carbon World for the invitation to join you today. Among the different activities that I perform in the Secretariat, one of them is leading the Climate Neutral Now initiative, through which we collaborate with One Carbon World to invite organizations to address their climate footprint and contribute to further addressing through the use of carbon markets. Your session is on science-based targets for climate action. Why science-based? Because we need to ensure that what we're doing is aligned with the best science that we have, that what we are doing, what you are doing as companies, is aligned with what is needed to avoid reaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming that is the goal of the Paris Agreement. The only way to ensure that is to align with what science is telling us is needed to avoid reaching that limit and therefore going through the worst effects of climate change. Also, setting a science-based target, which means a target, again, that is aligned with what scientists are telling us, gives your climate action plans and your targets, obviously, more credibility. It shows that you are doing your best to stay in line with what science requires. Now, setting a science-based target is not rocket science. It's a rather straightforward process, depending on how far advanced you are in developing your climate footprint, your greenhouse gas inventory. But once you have gone through that first key step of understanding what your footprint is, then it's relatively straightforward to set targets to try to reduce that footprint, that inventory, in line with what science tells us, which is reducing by 30% by 2030 compared to a 2018 baseline, and achieving net zero emissions by 2050, which means no net emissions. Whatever we emit is captured or absorbed through technologies. So I hope that this session will clarify even more what setting science-based targets is, and looking forward to hear how the session went. Wish you the best.
Thanks, Miguel, and welcome to this joint event on climate science-based targets from University College London, Superstarias and One Carbon World. My name is Joanna Marshall-Cook. I head up UCL's Generation 1 climate campaign, and UCL is one of the top research universities in the world. And not only are we tackling some of the big climate questions of tomorrow, from electric batteries to sea ice thinning, we're also working to make our campus a zero carbon campus by 2030. So what's this session about? We've all heard about science-based targets, but I think sometimes they can be a little bit daunting, and the phrase science is always a bit scary, isn't it? So this session is really to help unpack that a little bit, to demystify science-based targets. And we're going to be joined by 4 panelists from Superstarias, from Greenstone, UCL, and SAP, who are going to help us talk through how they dealt with putting together a science-based target for their organisation, and then how they're also making that a reality today. Throughout the session, you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions via Slido for the panelists. And then at the end of the session, we'll be asking those questions to each of the panelists with about 15 minutes. So if you can continue to ask questions throughout the session via Slido, and then we'll be collating those at the end. So our first panelist is Richard Jackson, who's my colleague and Director of Sustainability at UCL. And he's going to talk to us in a minute about what he's done with a team around setting a science-based target. But first off, we're going to have a short video with our explaining how we've put together our sustainability targets for UCL, and then we'll have a short chat with Richard. So if we can have the video now, please.
This is an exciting time to be part of UCL.
I'm really proud to be part of a university
that's been challenging societal norms
ever since it was created in 1826. Today we find ourselves at a turning point in history.
The way we deal with the climate and ecological crises
will shape how the next generation live on this planet.
And we want us to be part of the solution.
So our new strategy for a sustainable UCL is our plan to make a university that puts people and planet first. Our researchers are working on solutions from better batteries for electric vehicles to plastic-eating bacteria. Because we're like a small city with a community of 41,000 students and 12,000 staff. And if we can show together what a sustainable future looks like, we can help to influence the debate and show that a sustainable future is possible.
UCL's first commitment is that every student will have the tools to be a sustainable leader when they leave UCL. I studied philosophy and history of art, and I know that whatever career path I take, whether it be in academia or the business world, I know that sustainability will be a big part of it.
Secondly, as researchers, we all have a role and a responsibility to address the climate and ecological crisis. Having studied aspects of health most of my life, I am now moving into the crucial issue of sustainability, trying to bring about city-wide transformation to reduce carbon emissions.
Our Wild Bloomsbury campaign is about bringing people back to nature in the heart of our campus, with more biodiversity, more natural spaces and improved air quality.
UCL has committed to being a zero carbon university by 2030. For example, all our energy is already 100% renewable. A number of departments have committed to holding meat-free events, and we're looking into how to remain world-class researchers with a lower travel footprint.
UCL buys thousands of products every year. The Loop aims to challenge our relationship with the products we use every day by asking who's making them, where they come from, where they end up, and whether we really need them. We commit to reducing our waste and eliminating single-use plastic on campus by 2024.
At UCL, when we make a change today, we change what's possible for tomorrow.
UCL has the potential to make a big difference, both through how it runs its own organisation, but also through research and generating knowledge and working in a wide variety of partnerships. We can make change happen.
What will you do?
Okay, so just a brief introduction there to our sustainability targets. So Richard, can you tell us about how UCL went about developing those targets we just heard about?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joe. And thanks for inviting me to today's panel session. I suppose the first thing for us, as Miguel started out, is that developing targets in itself is not rocket science. And for us, the starting point was really understanding the data, understanding kind of where our carbon emissions come from in order that we can tackle them. So we, over the course of the 10 years I've been there, what we've been building up is really a much stronger database in terms of our scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 understanding, and using that to establish kind of the target that we've set. And you heard from the video, UCL is going to aim for a net zero university by 2030. With the data allows us then to sort of start to look at how we deliver the change. So where the opportunities for that change are going to come about.
And thanks, Richard. And you say that it's one of obviously very ambitious targets within the sector. How does that compare with other research institutions and other organisations, do you think?
So, I believe we've probably got the most ambitious target certainly around net zero across the UK sector. What led us to that conclusion? I suppose the first thing is I suppose, an increasing imperative that we need to take action. That, we are producing science that's telling us that the planet needs to address climate change. And I think when we spoke to our community, what they told us is there is an urgency around this and UCL needs to take action. But we also kind of dived into the data in order to understand how we might take action. So with regards to our Scope 1 emissions, what we're looking at is a whole-scale estates change, trying to move away from gas-fueled heat to one which is provided by zero carbon sources. We're looking at providing electricity from renewable sources. And then we're looking at a much wider supply chain engagement around our Scope 3. And when you look at our Scope 3, what we see is a very large footprint, but one which actually we need to work with our supply chain to try and deliver a value change to.
Great. And, what are the key things that you're doing at UCL to kind of make that target by 2030 a reality? As you say, it's pretty soon and there's a lot to do. What are your kind of top things that you're working on right now?
Okay. Personally, I think that the most important thing is realising that you need leadership in this, that this is not down to a very small team that sits within an organisation, but actually you need to instill leadership around this target across your institution, and you need their support. Secondly, I think you need to look at the structure which enables delivery of this. So what we're looking at is which parts of the institution have responsibility for carbon, whether that's the estates teams and the operations teams around some of the infrastructure, or whether that's our procurement teams around the way we purchase stuff. You need to look at how do you embed those requirements into their plans and what they do, and also how do you monitor the delivery of that through good quality data. I suppose that the final thing is keeping constant track and being aware of where you are being successful, but also where you're failing and where you may need to make some changes. And so for me, one of the most essential parts of delivery has been around structural change to the organisation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. So we're going to hear from a very different business now, and I'm going to be joined by Siva Naranjan from Superstarias, who's head of sustainability. Superstarias are a digital services and consulting software company, and they've got some pretty impressive carbon target as well, which we're going to hear about in the short video now.
We all know that climate change is one of the greatest challenges humanity faces. Governments, companies, and society are all responsible for taking action now. This is why in September 2020, we committed to reaching net zero emissions as of 2028. It's highly ambitious, but I'm convinced that we will meet this commitment. Why? Because for almost 10 years, we have been taking action which is paying off.
Since 2014, our offices, data centers and business travel have been carbon neutral. We have also drastically improved our office's energy performance everywhere in the group, like in Norway with the powerhouse building, which is energy positive, or in India, where we have installed solar panels or water recycling systems. And then, thanks to our employees' commitment and all the work done alongside our customer. For example, with the commute project, which aims to reduce congestion traffic in the Toulouse airport zone, the largest industrial area in Europe.
Thanks to all these initiatives, we are recognized as a leader in combating climate change, in particular by the global organization CDP, which, for the 4th year running, recognizes our environment policy at the highest level. And today, I'm proud to announce that the group became a signatory to the UN Climate Neutral Now initiative, thus confirming our commitment to carbon neutrality. As such, Superstarias is actively contributing to the Paris Agreement. Our objectives in terms of greenhouse gases emissions are aligned with mitigation pathways limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. But we are going even further with our net zero emissions commitment by 2028.
How can we achieve these objectives? By significantly reducing greenhouse gas emissions linked to our activity and by offsetting them when they cannot be avoided through carbon capture projects and afforestation in particular.
I would like to thank all group employees as well as all other stakeholders for the work they do every day towards achieving net zero emissions. I have full confidence in our ability to tackle these challenges all together.
Great. So, fantastic video, Stuart. Do you want to introduce yourself and then also tell us, how did Superstaria go about setting that science-based target, and what were your drivers for wanting to do that?
Thank you very much, Joe. It's my pleasure to join and represent the 46,000 colleagues of mine across 30 countries. And Superstaria has been looking at environmental sustainability specifically for a very long time. In fact, it's well over 10 to 15 years. And what we normally do is say we embed sustainability in everything we do. So therefore, well before the various requirements was placed upon businesses and governments, we've been looking at climate change for a long time. When COP21 came along in 2015, as a French origin, French listed company, when the French government requested businesses to participate, we were one of the first signatories to make commitments to join the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, and also making a commitment to set science-based targets. So what we did in 2017, and then it was a 2-degree requirement. So we were the first technology services company in the world to set a 2-degree limit across all of our countries. And then when the UN came back with a further demand to say in 2019, to say it needs to be 1.5 degrees, not 2 degrees, we revised our targets and got it validated independently by the Science-Based Target Initiative.
Brilliant. And so what challenges did you have in getting that target approved by the Science-Based Targets Initiative?
Interesting and challenging is what I would say. The Science-Based Targets requires you to set a target for your entire value chain, which means for a professional services company like ours, it includes our suppliers. And by the way, we have got over 13,000 suppliers, and our clients. So it included suppliers, clients, and what we did within our offices. So we had to look at the whole picture to ensure that whatever was material was included into our targets. Of course, we couldn't do this on our own. As you probably know, that we work in academia very closely with UCL. We got other partners. So what we did was we brought on board onto our advisory board your Professor Mark Maslin, who's the author of How to Save Our Planet book, to bring him to give us some guidance from an academia and what is going to happen next. Then we worked in concert with our partners, and I'm delighted to say that we have got Greenstones who are going to join you shortly, and SAP, where we use the SAP Concur system to bring everything together to help us to ensure that we have a plan which is workable. And then where we couldn't reduce our emissions, then we have our offsetting partner, One Carbon World, where we have gone to look at nature-based solutions in afforestation projects in Uruguay. That's what we have done to make sure. So we are in it together with our partners to ensure that we are in a position to deliver the commitment that you saw that was delivered by our group CEO on the video.
Brilliant, and a real example of how it takes lots of different expertise from very many different partners to make that a reality. In what progress would you say you've made so far with your commitments, Eva?
Our baseline is based on the year 2015, so we are about 5 years plus on. I'm delighted to say, if you think of the greenhouse gas protocol, Scope 1 and Scope 2, which is mainly for Superstaria, it's our offices, our data centers, we have managed to cut our carbon emissions by 76% per employee. And our biggest scope within our direct operation is our business travel, and we have cut that down by over 72% per employee. Even pre-pandemic, we had cut it down by close to 40%. We are 95% renewable electricity across the group. The reason why we are not quite 100% is our company has the desire to acquire specialist organizations. So by the time we almost get to 100, we have to revise it lower. So we are around the 95% mark. And what we also try and do is to make sure the results are transparent. We get it independently validated by external auditors. So we, as a French organization, we have a statutory requirement to get our non-financial information audited. So we have it audited to ISAE 3000 standard, and it's published in our annual reports. And in fact, it was touched on the video. Just in case it was missed, we have been on the A list of CDP, which is the single biggest benchmark for climate action and environment, which goes across 13,000 plus companies across the world. And we've been on the A list for the past 4 years. It's good going, but we need to do more.
Great. And what are your sort of top tips for other companies who are wanting to embark on a similar journey?
What we would say is perhaps maybe 3 things. One is you need to have senior stakeholder engagement. So your business case needs to be quite robust. So it's important. At Superstaria, I'm very pleased to say, from our chairman to group CEO to the newest recruit is involved. That's what we say. We haven't got 46,000 employees. We've got 46,000 sustainability champions in our company. So it's important to have engagement. The Science-Based Target Initiative has released a new net zero standard. So I would guide and advise organizations thinking about it to look at that standard very carefully, because it has got 2 types of standards. One is a near-term goal, and the other one is a net zero goal by 2050. So that's important to understand. And if you don't have the expertise, please collaborate with other organizations, just like Superstaria has done. And then finally, I would say your best ambassadors are your own colleagues, your own employees, your own partners. And in fact, we wouldn't have been invited to this webinar if not for working with our partners like the SAPs, like the Greenstone Plus, like UCL, and like One Carbon World. So I think we need to collaborate to contribute to a safer and a more sustainable planet for all.
Wonderful. Thanks, Siva. That's brilliant, and looking forward to hearing questions for Siva later. So in fact, that's just a quick reminder to keep submitting your questions for all the panelists through Slido, and we'll get the opportunity to hear their thoughts on those questions at the end. So our next guest is Marcus Wagner from SAP, who's Global Environmental Lead for SAP. And I'm told that 77% of the world's transactions revenue runs through SAP's software systems. So a different type of software company. And I'm hoping Marcus will tell us all about that in a minute. And first up, we've got a short video from them to explain their approach to sustainability.
Imagine a future with zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. At SAP, we power the technology and innovation required to activate this bold vision into reality. We provide sustainable, intelligent enterprises with the solutions required to manage their green line to reduce their carbon footprint, to rethink business processes across the entire value chain, and to safeguard social responsibility across workforce, sourcing, and procurement. Join us in our commitment to chasing zero.
So, hi, Marcus. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what sustainability means for SAP?
Yes, thanks a lot. Happy to contribute. First of all, Siva, thanks a lot for promoting our SAP solutions. That's really great, awesome. So, Jana, I'm part of the global sustainability team, so we directly report to our executive board, to our chief financial officer. And our goal is really based on our purpose to help the world run better and improve people's lives, to embed sustainability in all the different aspects as part of our value chain. On one hand, of course, what can we do to drive our own operations? And of course, we should not forget that we have great customers and partners where we could help with our solutions to help their journeys in order to run sustainability in the different companies and partner business.
Brilliant. And why is the Science-Based Targets initiative in particular important for SAP?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, it is important, not to forget, really to underline, because what we have hearing also from the other panelists, it is embedded and has to be embedded in the core value creation of the company. Not only focusing on the operations, don't get me wrong, of course it's important to drive topics like buildings, energy, electricity, and so on. But the beautiful aspect of a science-based target is to think about what's really the core value of the company. And if you are able to embed target setting like the science-based target in your value chain, like the upstream and the downstream emissions, then that's pretty cool. And then what we are also hearing, not to forget to align this with your key stakeholders. It's not only the journey of our sustainability team, it's the journey of the entire company. So it's about really the value creation. Secondly, it's really focusing on the entire end-to-end. And last but not least, again, it's about how to align. And that's also what Shiva was talking about, to have this buy-in from all the different lines of business, and of course also from your executive board.
Yeah, I think we're going to be hearing even more about buy-in throughout the session. And what would you say were the key elements of the SBTI approval process? How did you go through that as SAP?
To underline again, I would like to focus on 3 topics. And the most important one, we were hearing this also from Siva, it's really getting the buy-in from your most important stakeholders. And it's, of course, the board, but not only the board. And I will come to that in a second. Secondly, it's really you have to have target setting, but also monitoring processes in place. It's always great to set a target, but what does it mean the next upcoming years? Where do you stand? What do you need to do in order to change certain things? And the third one, it's about the internal and external communication. So coming back, when it comes to the governance structure and stakeholder management, of course, you have to have executive buy-in. But there are other very, very important departments usually in the company. For example, there's a team dealing with all the investor relations, but also doing the financial planning for the next years. And that's really important to connect the dots to say, okay, we need to have a clear plan when it comes to financial decision making, but also we need to have a clear plan when it comes to our climate actions. And to bring both things together, that's very much important. But also that was at a certain point in time also a challenge, not to forget. Similar to Superstarias, SAP was the first German company in 2017 with an improved target. I think jointly we were one of the first 10 companies globally. And at this time it was like, Marcus, what? It's a science-based target. What is it about? And you wanna align a 30 years target? That's strange, right? Really to connect the dots, to bring both dimensions together. That's when I'm talking about stakeholder management. Monitoring, steering, you have to have transparency, not only for the own team, but also for the entire employees and communities to always see where we are. And of course, due to our own technology, where we are able to provide also sustainability dashboard where all the employees could have access to the performance and to the measures. And of course, it's all about internal communication, but also external communications. For example, when it comes to the disclosure of our financial numbers and the non-financial numbers, we have it together in an integrated report validated by an external auditor. I think these are the three key elements around our journey.
Fantastic. And so finally, what are your priorities for next year? How are you going to make this all happen?
Oh, of course, number one, it's really pave the way towards the net zero business. But we should not forget the nature positive aspects. Look, based on our vision to drive impact within the planetary boundaries, we have to have a clear focus on climate action. But we should not forget the biodiversity piece and the nature positive. And there are a couple of initiatives. Number one is really bringing this holistic steering reporting thinking in our company. Not only focus on financials, like revenue and profitability, and the others are focusing on non-financials like CO2 and so on. We need to bring this together to steer the company holistically. And of course, when it comes to certain initiatives around this holistic steering reporting, providing dashboards to embed non-financial thinking in our value, in the core value of SAP, right? Like our developers, like procurement, sustainability and climate action has to be embedded anywhere. That's, I think, our journey for next year, but also for the next upcoming years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marcus. And we'll be hearing from you a little bit more in the question and answer later. So our final panelist is Matthew de Villiers, who's CEO of Greenstone. And Greenstone can help us all, actually. So they help clients report on their sustainability performance. So a different type of software company, again, specifically focusing on sustainability. So Matthew, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the challenges that you've had as an organisation in terms of sustainability?
Great, thank you very much, Jan, and very good to be here. As Jenna mentioned, we're a sustainability software and services business. The other thing that's slightly different with us is we're small. So we're about 30 people, and we have offices in New York and London. And that presents its own challenges as a company embarking on a sustainability journey, but specifically when you look at SBTI. And so I wanted to share just a few points of kind of what we've achieved over our history. And I think one of the most important things at the outset is to just share with people, and obviously we work with a lot of clients and it's a similar experience with them, that this is a journey. It's not a single hit that one can immediately just put a plan and off you go. We see it was definitely for ourselves, and we're in the space, but we see it a lot with our clients. Over the last years, we initially started with the UN Global Compact as a reference framework for us, as it was very accessible and gave us a framework from which to start. We then set our science-based target only in 2020, so we're pretty new to it. And we've been pretty cautious about making that step. We'd helped and worked with a lot of our clients on that journey, but it was a big step for us in terms of being sure that we would be able to deliver on what we wanted to put out there. All our offices are, and internal data centers, 100% renewable energy. We're measuring all of our scope 1, 2, 3 emissions every year and public reporting those. Our offices offer zero waste to landfill, and we have a recycling program. So internally, we've got the aspects in place, and those have been put in place along the journey. On an external side, we promote engagement with SDGs through our software and the solutions we provide, so we make that accessible, enable our clients. We're formal supporters of the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD, and we're also signatories of PRI. So again, through our work, we're enabling organisations, the investment community, and more broadly across other sectors with their own journeys. Just back internally, I think Mark was talking about the kind of engagement with the internal organisation. We have very active communication with our own employee base through our own policies and our employee handbook, where their clear expectations are set and communicated. And then we also run through our board, a subcommittee of the board, climate change and risks, both the management and mitigation of those through the security and risk subcommittee. So there's also a formal element to that. Where we're sitting now is, having set up our SBTI target a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we're now very actively looking at what we're going to do about a net zero target. Our original one was looking at a 2030 commitment, but the journey is moving faster than we thought, and we're looking now at how we can introduce a net zero target. And within that, probably the biggest challenge for us is our scope 3 and our supply community. And I can come back to that a little bit later.
Yeah, I think we're all struggling with the scope 3. It's just a huge challenge, isn't it? Can you tell us a little bit more about what Greenstones targets are going to be? So you touched on thinking about net zero, but what's your sort of plan for the future?
Well, I think the plan we had originally was 50% for 2030. But if we look at, now we're very comfortable about getting that, and the things we've already put in place are achieving that. The introduction of the New York office was part of that to reduce travel. It became very clear we wouldn't be able to ever get towards net zero if we had to continue to travel. And doing things like creating a base there that we no longer have to do that travel to the extent we did makes a big change to that. I think, I touched on the external side. Interestingly, in a business of our size, we don't have the buying power with our supply base. So we have significant emissions in our hosting environment. Historically, with one of the big players, we actually put in our solutions at a almost no cost basis just to get them on board, and they were relatively new to the whole sustainability sphere. So we kind of tried to get them on the move. Unfortunately, several years later, they were taken over by another private capital business, and a lot of that went up. And we've now changed supplier. So I think as smaller entities, it's a little more challenging. But I think for anybody embarking on this process, the involvement of the supply chain, and either through the procurement process or engaging with them and helping them adapt. And sometimes it means us not just demanding, but understanding their business and seeing how we could help them adapt. And in the end, sometimes it means having to change suppliers. But we also see this on the external side through investments with our investment community clients, where the investments they're making, and we hear a lot at the moment about the whole investor ESG scope, but we can control a lot of what we're doing through that investment part as well. And then just the scope 3 is complicated, it's extensive, but it's something we all need to get our hands around now.
Lovely, thank you, Matthew. So we're going to just round off this sort of inspiration section with a couple more videos. So from existing participants in the UN Climate Neutral Now programme, Southampton's High School and Shinfield St Mary's C of E Junior School, to sort of see how other parts of the education sector are approaching net zero. So we have those videos now, please.
At South Hampstead High School, we aim to take a whole school approach to embedding sustainability into our education. Our first challenge was to fully understand what our environmental impact was as an organisation, particularly in line with our student-led Project Zero goals. Project Zero aims to significantly reduce the waste we send to landfill, remove single-use plastics from day-to-day life at the school, and make South Hampstead a carbon-neutral school by 2026. The One Carbon World Carbon Footprint Survey helped us to define key areas to focus on and develop some meaningful and measurable targets for the reduction in our consumption, as well as the opportunity for offsetting in a truly regenerative and sustainable way.
But we aren't just aiming to become a carbon neutral organisation. We want to embed sustainability into everything we do. Our headmistress takes on a new challenge each year. Last year she ran 1,000 miles to raise over £10,000 for the Woodland Trust, and this year she is committed to only buying locally sourced fruit and vegetables.
The Sixth Form Eco Committee leads on our Project Zero at the school. They've organised the removal of single-use fossil fuel-based plastic from the canteen, a weekly meat-free day, and a partnership with a local charity which aims to alleviate food poverty by creating meals from edible food waste. We also have Form Eco reps who make sure that sustainability messages are communicated regularly, and pupils have delivered a Teach the Teacher session to share ways that sustainability issues can be incorporated into lessons across the curriculum.
We've also sought help from the wider school community, and thanks to grants and donations, we were able to completely offset our carbon footprint and achieve net carbon zero in 2019. But we know that the real priority for the future is to reduce, reduce, reduce. As we look to our 150th anniversary in 2026, we hope that when we reach that date, we will also be celebrating becoming a carbon neutral organisation for the future.
Part of the One Carbon World grant, we have verified, reduced and offset our carbon footprint.
We are also a participant of the United Nations Carbon Neutral Now initiative.
We have set emission reduction targets in line with climate science.
Hello, my name is Hoyt Swagger. I work for Woking and Borough Council in the energy team.
We grow produce for our local food banks in 24 raised beds, a hugelculture and an aquaponic biodome. Hey fishy fishies! We use landfills to compost our food waste.
We're also working with our community to reduce our travel footprint.
Our footprint is reducing and we love doing our bit to help fight climate change.
Or we want to inspire other people to start their journey into sustainability.
Thank you for watching!
So that's nice stories there at the end. We're going to go into question and answer now with the different panellists, and we've had a lot of questions from the audience, so thank you for submitting those. One kind of key theme that kept coming up is, where to start. So I want to set a target for my organisation. Where do I start with that process? Marcus, do you want to kick us off first?
Sure. I would assume in a corporate where usually where to start, you have to go back to the heart of your company. What's really the value you provide, and then you need to should go back to the stakeholders to understand where to embed activities, whether it's about how to deal with suppliers, but also whether it's about the downstream. In our business, it's more related to downstream business. So we have more than 400,000 clients, right? And they are using our SAP solution. So number one, you have to identify what's really the core. Secondly, then it's all about data, right? You need to have a baseline, and IT, by the way, can help. And then you need to go to define the target setting, for example, with a great support by the SBTI initiative, and then to simulate to see what does it mean. And the fourth point is, after having the target, it's really the alignment with the executives. And not to forget what we are hearing in the video, you have to execute, to reduce, to avoid, and so on. It's really a phased approach. It starts all with your core business activities, with your value chain. Then again, what I said earlier, data, baselining, alignment, stakeholder management, and then execution and monitoring. These are a few very important topics, at least we observed in our journey in 2017, but also in 2019, where we aligned again our science-based target to be in line with the 1.5 ambitions.
Thanks, Marcus. And Matthew, could you give us a perspective from a sort of smaller business, how you would go about that?
Yeah, I think going back to the journey, it's the same thing with data. I mean, for me, we're constantly amazed with clients at seeing how much data transforms their thinking and informs their journeys. So even if one starts with the smallest aspect of your sustainability program or initiative, get the data in front of you, and the questions then start to follow. And the engagement with the rest of the organization once there's data, people want to compare, people want to compete, and you've got something to underpin that whole discussion or narrative internally. So for us, it's always the data is the critical starting point.
Lovely. And Siva or Richard, any thoughts on that question about where to start?
I would echo what both Marcus and Matthew have said, but depends on your maturity of your organization. So I would say to an organization, step one is to ensure that you have an environmental management system that gives you the context within to understand what is material for your organization and what are the aspects that you need to focus on. And then it gives you the foundation to gather the data, what is material for you, and then step towards looking at an international standard like ISO 14001 initially, and then begin to think about target setting. Because target setting comes slightly, it's the fashion for today, but you need to do the foundation. You can't put a roof on a house without a foundation. So we need to start at the lowest level, and then leveraging partners would be a good way to think about how you could how do your peers set targets, kind of thing. And of course, engage your employees, your colleagues, fountain of information. Before you go outside, tap inside, just like what we have done at Superstarias. And I'm sure other companies like SAP and Greenstone do likewise.
Thanks, Siva. I mean, that's a nice segue into the next question, actually, which is about, is it hard to set a target and do I need an expert? So I don't know, Siva, actually, can you talk about that? Because you gave us a great example of all the different partners that you worked with.
Mm-hmm. Because the net zero and target setting is so important, there are many, many forums that companies can join. So if the exam question is, do you need to hire an expert? No, the answer is not necessarily. Of course, having the right partner means that you can do things quicker. If you have a robust software system to capture your data, automate and produce the figures, which is repeatable to an auditor, then it makes eminent sense type thing. So it's an optional thing to bring in experts, but I think in the longer term, depending on the size of your organization, leveraging the expertise of specialist companies can only help. And also, for example, at Superstarias, we also help our key suppliers if they have questions. So we have an obligation to help our supply chain to make them understand and get them on board, because at the end of the day, none of us can do this on our own in isolation. So it becomes important to consider peer groups and other forums to understand and learn more about target setting.
Great, thanks, Siva. Richard, did you get some experts in to help with the target for UCL?
Yes, we did. I mean, I suppose just coming back to both the previous question and this question. I mean, I think the starting point obviously is about data. That's my view. and using the data not just kind of to understand where you are, but also then to analyze that data to understand what you can do with it, or what change you want to create. And it's through that analysis that you then engage with your senior leaders. I think you have to look at yourselves first and see whether you've got the right individuals to help bring that data together and to do the analysis for you. If you don't, then obviously going outside and bringing some experts in is going to be crucial to creating that change. I think with UCL, we've had the benefit of being able to bring in some external support, but also we've got our own research community who we've been able to draw on. And one of the great things about working in a university, of course, is that we're surrounded by people who are having a major impact on the world, and we want to be able to use those individuals for the knowledge they can bring us to create the change that we want to create internally.
Super. I'll just move on to another question now. So, how do we get staff engaged in our targets? So I think all of you panelists have talked about that. Marcus, do you want to take that first?
Well, when we started our own journey in 2017, I would like to rely for a second on the former question. We were more or less alone, right? We needed to build up our own knowledge. But look, if we're going to start again the journey, then of course we would definitely rely on others, to learn from others, to engage, because also, and that's really a challenge, there's huge confusion out in the market. In our IT tech industry, it's relatively easy, right? But let's imagine you're in the hard to debate industry. Now, what does it mean? All the different terms about carbon neutrality, net zero. This is something which really hurts us a little bit, because it leads to confusion, not in our own department because we are the experts, but others are hearing why they are going for net zero and carbon positive. So we need to have really a clear definition and terms, and based on now the latest announcement by the SBTI, that's really great, because then we have the same, or should have the same understanding. And back to the question, when we started our own journey, it was really a kind of sustainability journey. And we were more or less alone, but because nobody was there. Today, I would go for a kind of a tandem approach to inviting our financial guys, but also our sustainability guys to do it together, because it's not only a sustainability strategy, it's a company strategy to sign the science-based target. And that's really important to think about who are the stakeholders, and all of a sudden to go back to them, whether it's about the corporate financial reporting guys or the investment relations, and to join forces, right, to do it together. And not only that you're going to be in charge, and then to say, hey, now you need to get back and to go for an alignment and a buy-in. Do it together. This could deliver a benefit, and then you're much faster to go through all the processes. That would be my advice for the resource topic, but also for the most important guys.
Great. And Matthew, what about you? How did you get your company and stakeholders engaged in your targets?
I think looking more broadly than just us, because we're little and it's easy to communicate and share. But I think one of the critical things, if we're going to achieve the scale of change that we need to achieve across any organization, it's never going to be done by sustainability committees. They're there to shepherd, direct, lead, and to track progress. But the whole organization needs to be engaged. And just to pull out two illustrations of that, the things that we see working very effectively, obviously at an exec level, incentives are a key player in changing behavior. And in this space, it's no different. The amount of action and resource that becomes available when the right people are incentivized to do the things we need to on a program like this is not to be underestimated. At the complete other end, where I think there's a possible change and more activity could be done, is in recruitment and HR. So what is HR doing about bringing in the right kind of people into the organization across all fields? When we're hiring anybody, we're wanting them to be entrepreneurial, quantitatively skilled, those general skills that people have. Sustainability needs to be added to that, because if we're bringing in people who've got an appetite and an ambition for an organization to be sustainable, that becomes pervasive in the organization. We've got people who all understand a language or have a consistent commitment. So we've seen some very interesting things done in companies where that's becoming not a dictate within HR, but it's certainly a consideration in the recruitment process, and that allows for a much more informal program of activity and initiative across the organization. So often great ideas come from people who haven't been blinkered by having worked for the country a long time. So there's new starters that come in and say, hang on, why is this being done in this way? And couldn't we do it somewhere else? Ask the difficult questions. So just a couple of points on that.
Thanks, Matthew. And it sort of brings us into our next thing around question, which is about transparency and accountability. So, we've made these targets, but actually, how do we report on them and who's accountable for them? Richard, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, I mean, it's my view and probably from my experience that firstly, we need to be as transparent as we can be about the progress against targets. And there's some really good examples of where companies have been transparent, whether they're succeeding or failing. They're open about kind of the progress they're making. Certainly, for me, who's accountable, I suppose internally at UCL, this is one of the big issues for us at the moment. When you break the targets down, we have different levels of accountability across the organisation, and we are looking to be absolutely clear in people's roles and responsibilities of what they're accountable for with these particular targets, and that then they're accountable not only for delivery against that target, but also for reporting against the delivery. And that's all part of creating this transparent approach to delivery of our ultimate goals, which is net zero by 2030.
Great. And Marcus, how have you found that from a sort of huge company like SAP? How does that work in terms of transparency?
So we were hearing a lot about data and data strategy. That's always the first topic, right? Because this leads to transparency. And transparency, why is it important? It's really important because it gains trust for all stakeholders, for the investors, for the partners, but also for the employees. And if you're going to have trust, then you can really, number 4, drive the change and to start changing the behavior. And therefore, we have different parts of disclosure. Of course, the external disclosure as part of our integrated report means our annual report together with the sustainability report, really to provide all the figures and facts to all our stakeholders to gain transparency. And for the employees, we have some more details in our so-called sustainability dashboard, where we provide also the figures and numbers, for example, per lines of business, per location, because then we can start the dialogue with our lines of business leaders, with the employees to say, look, you are in this business division, this is your performance, right? Let's compare this to the other lines of business and team. And then you can start thinking and also to define certain actions. So all in all, again, transparency is so much important in order to gain trust. And if you're going to have the trust, then that's really the starting point to drive change and behavior actions.
Lovely. And we've just got time for, I think, one more very quick question. So this is a specific question for Richard. What are the challenges for a university in contrast to a private company in terms of sustainability?
That's a good question. And probably kind of there's multiple layers, I think. Firstly is not all universities are the same. So we all vary in size and scale, number of students. So we can't treat universities as one. And I think size is quite important then in terms of how we deal with sustainability issues. I think one of the interesting things for universities, which is different perhaps from other organisations, is our structure. Often we're set up not as a top-down organisation, but with I suppose levels of hierarchy which exist both at the top level, but also through various departments and faculties. And therefore, when we do want to create change, we not only engage with our senior team, we have to engage across the whole organisation, which creates a lot more work, but arguably also creates greater level of buy-in if you're able to achieve that. I think thirdly, we operate over big campuses, which are our historical campuses, and therefore we need to think about how do we deliver change within those campuses, often to heritage buildings, which we don't have the finances or the options to remove and build with lovely, shiny new net zero buildings. So it's kind of how do we create that sort of level of transformation. And I think fourthly, and probably one of the most important things, is our customers are right next to us. Our customers being our students, and our customers are very vocal. And so for us, they create a very active voice for the change that they want, and we have to address that.
Wonderful. Well, that was the end of the questions, and time for us to wrap up. So my thanks to all of the panelists and for all of your insights, and to all of the questions from the audience. Thanks for being so engaged, and hopefully we can continue the conversation online. Okay, thanks very much.